Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast, an ongoing series of conversations and considerations to help people understand and embrace their own unique creativity for fulfilling lives and brilliant careers. My name is Ben Talon. I'm an illustrator and author, and I bring 16 years of creative industry experience working with the New York Times, The Guardian, the Premier League, and more. And I invite designers, artists, psychologists, scientists, coaches, athletes, sensitivity experts, and all kinds of thought leaders to help us broaden our knowledge of creativity. Creativity is a fundamental pillar of human happiness, a vital ingredient in the solutions to our problems, but so often misunderstood. The show is supported by founding sponsor and B Corp, Illustration X. Take a look at their stunning range of illustrators and animators at illustrationx.com. If you like the music for the show, it's by Dirty Freud, who you can listen to now on Spotify and all good music streaming services. Hello and welcome back to the show, guys. It's that time of the week to wrap things up with what we learned about creativity from this week's guest, staff writer for The New Yorker and author of Filterworld, How Algorithms Flattened Culture, Kyle Chayka. So what's been going on? What did you think of the episode? If you haven't heard it yet, shame on you. Get back there and do it. There's a highlights edition if you're pushed for time, so there's no excuses. I'm joking. Take your time. These things are up for a long, long time. But if you did listen, I hope you enjoyed it anywhere near as much as I did, because Kyle was absolutely awesome, and it was quite the honour to get him on the show, actually. You know, lofty titles and all that, and such a talented guy. But we did talk about the current situation with the flattening of culture via algorithms and the internet and what it's done. So what did we learn? Number one, we can learn from the early internet. The early internet was beautiful, and Kyla and I shared a deep appreciation of the rudimentary but passionate nature of it. So what the early internet was, as we discussed, was people who had to take great effort and time out of their schedule to share something they were passionate about, because it was a lot of nerds posting images of, you know, in Kyle's case, Dragon Ball Z and anime. In my case, professional wrestling. And it was amazing to find other people from places in the world you had no way of accessing, for me, like America, that were into wrestling. This was just incredible. It opened up the world. It was a very early, wonderful, lovely part of globalization, you know? And it was, I wouldn't have my career if it wasn't for that. So we did talk about that, but there's a lot you can learn about the early internet, about the way people had to do that and how you had to have a connection and the way that any kind of interactions were done out of passion. We very much agreed that we need to reintroduce a little of that. I don't think there's any going back, and that's something that Kyle said, but there are certainly ways we can try to harvest a little of what made that work and apply it to this algorithmically choked creative mediocrity, you know, overwhelm that we're experiencing with all the TikToks and everything else today. So that's what we can do. We can learn from the early internet. Number two, curation is key. Now, Kyle and I talked about the need for human curation when it comes to consumption of creativity, how we share it, how we take it in. It's really, really important. And we laughed about my time as a member of staff at Blockbuster Video and how that gave you this social currency, because you were the Blockbuster guy. You were one of those members of staff who had some authority because they were right there. They were backstage when those new films were coming out, and, you know, pre-internet, that had real value because you were the gatekeeper to those videos. You could tell them about a new Korean film that had come into the store that week, or a new nerdy sci-fi film that had come in. And I loved that at the time. And joking aside, it was quite funny when you'd be spotted in a takeaway, for example, by somebody in town who knew you as the Blockbuster guy. But it did bring about human connection, and it did give us that, the way that culture does today. It gives you something you can own through your identity and take it to the people who want to consume it. And there's something truly beautiful about that. And Kyle and I got into it. But it's the same with museums and galleries. That's why they're wonderful places to go, because they are curated and a human has had to pull that together. I think the same of the person on the record store and the market who has all those records, and they've got stories behind them, and they can tell you a little bit about something, and it brings about just a wonderful direct bit of dialogue around something that bonds you. And that's really crucial. So I think when we are going on the internet and we do begin to scroll and we start to look at things like Pinterest, think about it. Who's curating it? Go and find out who's made that piece of culture that you found. Don't just take an image and stick it in your reference bank. Find out who's done it. What did it mean to them? Can you connect with them? It's something really valid that came up in this conversation. Number 3, we have work to do. We are in a bad place. Filterworld gets that across. My conversation with Erin Riley got that across. My conversation with Max Ottignon, founder of Ragged Edge at D&AD New Blood Festival, got that across. There are many factors. Budgets are getting slashed. Even the big agencies, the big ad agencies, it's a kind of top-down trickle. They're having to fight for work and lower their prices. That's what I'm hearing on the grapevine. I've been contacting people with my coaching, some big organisations, and while they love the look of what I'm doing, the workshop, one of the responses I'm getting coming back is that we're sorry, but we're spending the budget on the tools. One of those tools is AI training. That's the fight. That's what we're up against. So each of us kind of has a responsibility to learn how to package, champion and sell our creativity, and why that matters. Because if we don't, and we accept the algorithm, we accept and bow to the mediocrity, every one of us is in deep trouble. Number 4, what are you consuming and who are you going to tell? Because that's something that Kyle and I are kind of wrapped up on, about going the extra mile. When you hear something that you like, you've got a duty to find out who it is, not just imbibe it subconsciously because Spotify's recommended it, but find out who it is. Can you support that band directly? Can you go to their Bandcamp and buy a vinyl? Own that lovely piece of culture. Tell them you got it. Tell them you loved it. Make a bond with the band and you're there forever, part of their lives and vice versa. I think it's really, really important that we talk about what we're consuming, what we're into. People who are my age, I'm 41 now, but people will remember what it was like to come into school or work the day after a good piece of TV or a good piece of radio or a new number 1 in the charts, and tell people what it meant to you. Talk about how you received it. I'll never forget the Blur and Oasis battle for number 1 in the charts, even though it was media bollocks, as we now realise looking back. As a 12-year-old kid at the time, it really wasn't. I'd pinned my colours to Blur's mast. And I was a northern kid, so I was a bit of an anomaly. And that gave me such identity in school, in the school bus queue. And when it went in at number 1, I went in there like it was my football team had won the league. It was like, get in, yeah. And I just think that there's something lovely about that. You wear those colours, so do it and go to the creators and connect with them. Number 5, the algorithm hasn't won yet. Kyle and I discussed things like e-newsletters and ways of connecting with those artists, as I mentioned in the previous point. So I think it's really important that we do that work. Things like it's encouraging for me to see discussions like the Disruption seminar that TBWA did, that I was a part of at Cannes Lions, that D&AD did at DNA at New Blood. And the reason that came about at New Blood was because I pitched it. I talked to Max. He was up for it. Max Ottignon of Ragged Edge, that is. I took it to D&AD. Marie Dryden was up for it, and it happened. Now, without those little bits of taking action, without those steps towards making it a reality, that doesn't happen. And maybe that conversation about the algorithms and about the flattening of culture doesn't happen. Maybe if Kyle doesn't have the passion to write his book, that doesn't happen either. We have collective and individual power, so let's make it happen. Because there's a shit fight for business at the moment, business that is creative, business that makes a difference. There's been campaigns that have created a lot of discourse recently, so the BBH Burger King campaign, Golan's Asics, with Brian Cox. I think it's Brian Cox, forgot his name right there. Shame on me if I haven't. But with the actor from Succession, beautiful, beautiful advert. It's getting conversations going on, and it's really, really cool to see. And I think that if we don't keep pushing for that, Brian Cox, I've been checking it there while I'm chatting to you. then this stuff doesn't happen. But there is good creativity going on. So find out who's done it, share your passion of it, connect with them, take an action. I think we all owe it to ourselves. Cheers, guys. That's wrapped up this week's episode. Go back and listen to my chat with Kyle Chayka, staff writer at The New Yorker and author of Filterworld, How Algorithms Flatten Culture. Brilliant, brilliant book that I couldn't recommend any higher. Thank you for listening. Check out the founding sponsor for the show, illustrationx.com. Support the Ukrainian Institute by championing the Ukrainian creative community, ui.org.ua in this horrible time of war. Thank you, guys. Love you. Take care.